The wedding hall remained silent, filled with tension and fear. Adanna's black dress was like a shadow over everyone there, a sign that something dark was about to be revealed. She looked around, her gaze cold and steady, before turning back to Chidi. "You think the spirits don't know what you did?" she asked, her voice carrying through the hall. "You think you can just walk away from everything, including my father's blood on your hands?" The guests gasped. They all knew that Adanna's father had died suddenly, but no one had ever suspected foul play. They had assumed it was an illness that took him. Now, hearing her words, a horrible realization crept over them. Chidi felt his throat tighten. He hadn't expected Adanna to bring up her father's death in front of everyone, especially not here, on what should have been their wedding day. His heart pounded as memories of that night flooded his mind, the night they had sealed their fates with blood. The story flashed back to the fateful night 2 years earlier, when Adanna and Chidi had stood in the forest under a dark moonless sky. They were desperate for power, willing to do anything to escape the poverty and struggles they faced. Adanna's father, Shifokeke, was a wealthy man, but he had always refused to support her ambitions. He wanted her to marry a powerful man who could expand his legacy, but he saw Chidi as unworthy, a man with no background, no riches, and no influence. Driven by resentment and greed, Adanna and Chidi had decided to eliminate the only person standing in their way, her father. Together they had planned his death, knowing that with him gone, they could inherit his wealth and power. But taking his life was not enough. They needed something more to secure their future. It was then they sought the help of a strange old man known for his dark knowledge. A man whispered to have ties with ancient spirits. He promised them a way to gain power, but it would require a deep binding ritual. "If you spill his blood together, the spirits will give you everything you desire," he had told them. "But beware, this bond cannot be broken. If you betray each other, the spirits will come for you." That night, they had gone to Shifokeke's home. Adanna had convinced her father to meet her alone, pretending she wanted to make peace with him. She led him to a dark corner of the house, and there, with Chidi's help, they took his life. They spilled his blood, sealing their promise with a ritual chant that the old man had taught them. The pact was complete, and from that night on, their lives began to change. They inherited Chifokeke's wealth, climbed the social ladder, and became respected figures in the community. But the dark memory of what they have done lingered in their minds like a shadow that followed them wherever they went. As Adanna continued to speak, the truth finally came out. "Yes, Chidi," she said, her voice full of anger and bitterness. "You and I killed my father, and for what? For wealth, for power. We spilled his blood, and now you want to leave me after all we did?" The guests were horrified. Some of them looked at Adanna with shock, while others turned their gaze to Chidi, their faces full of judgment and disgust. The whispers in the crowd grew louder, everyone murmuring about the horrible secret they had just learned. Chidi's face turned pale. He hadn't wanted to remember that night, the blood on his hands, the sight of Shifokeke's lifeless body. He had tried to forget it, to convince himself that it was all worth it. But now, standing before the crowd, he felt exposed, vulnerable and trapped. "Adanna, please," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Let's not talk about this here." But she only laughed, a cold, empty sound that sent chills through everyone in the room. "Why not, Chidi? Are you ashamed of your sins? Or are you just scared of the spirits who are watching us now?" As if in response to her words, a cold wind swept through the hall. The candles flickered, and the shadows seemed to deepen. It felt as though something dark and unseen had entered the room, something that was waiting. Adanna looked at Chidi and watching, holding up the same black cloth they had used in the ritual that night. The blood stains from the terrible night were still visible, faded but unmistakable. It was a reminder of the pact they had made, the lives they had destroyed, and the bond that now held them together. She began to tear the cloth slowly, her voice echoing through the hall. "Spirits of the forest, spirits of the dead, hear me. We broke our promise, and now one of us seeks to escape the pact. Let him face your judgment." As the cloth tore, Chidi felt a sharp burning pain in his chest. It clutched his heart gasping as if visible hands were reaching inside him, pulling at his very soul. His vision blurred, and when he saw strange shadows swirling around him, dark shapes that seemed to come alive filled with rage, the guests screamed, some of them fainting in fear as they watched Chidi struggle. They could see the agony on his face, the terror in his eyes, as he realized that the spirits were coming for him. As Chidi struggled, he saw visions of Chifokeke's face, twisted in anger and pain. His voice echoed in Chidi's mind, accusing him, cursing him for the betrayal. "You took my life, Chidi." The voice whispered, cold and hollow. "You took my blood, my wealth, my daughter, and now you want to run. There is no escape." Chidi fell to his knees, his body trembling as the visions overwhelmed him. He saw the night of the mother replaying over and over in his mind. The blood on his hands, the lifeless body of Chifokeke. He could hear the old man's warning echoing in his ears, reminding him that the pact was forever, that breaking it would bring ruin. He looked up at Adanna, his face filled with desperation. "Please, Adanna," he whispered. "Forgive me. Let's undo this. I will do anything." But Adanna's face was cold, unmoved by his pleas. "There is no forgiveness, Chidi. We sealed our fates the moment we took my father's life. Now you must pay the price." The shadows grew darker, closing in around Chidi. The guests watched in horror, some of them trying to leave, but finding the doors locked, as if the spirits themselves were keeping them inside. Chidi's screams filled the hall as the shadows swallowed him, his body convulsing in agony. It was as if the spirits were tearing him apart from the inside, punishing him for the betrayal for trying to break the pact. And then silence. The shadows faded. The candles returned to their steady glow, and the air grew still. Chidi was gone. His body vanished, leaving only a dark stain on the floor where he had knelt. Adanna stood alone at the altar, the black cloth still in her hand. She looked around at the guests, her face calm and cold, as if nothing had happened. "Let this be a lesson to all of you," she said, her voice steady and emotionless. "A pact with the spirit is not something you break. A betrayal demands a price." With those words, she turned and walked out of the hall, leaving the guests in stunned silence, haunted by the memory of what they had just witnessed. They would never forget the darkness that had claimed Chidi, nor the price he had paid for breaking the secret pact he had made with Adanna.